In his testimony to lawmakers Tuesday, Bill Taylor explained what he saw as two separate channels of U.S. policymaking on Ukraine. Taylor said the regular channel, which he helped lead as top U.S. envoy to Ukraine, had, quote, strong bipartisan support, both in Congress and in all administrations, since Ukraine's independence from Russia in 1991. At the same time, Taylor said there was, quote, an irregular, informal channel of U.S. policymaking with respect to Ukraine, one which included then Special Envoy Kurt Volker, Ambassador Sondland, Secretary of Energy Rick Perry, and, as I subsequently learned, Mr. Giuliani, referring to the president's personal attorney. Glen served as a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State during the Obama administration. He's also the author of Window Seat on the World, detailing his travels with former Secretary of State John Kerry. And he joins us now from Boston. Thank you so much for being with us, Glen.
Great to be with you, Elaine.
So explain for us, first of all, how the regular channel of policymaking at the State Department is supposed to work with countries like Ukraine.
Well, I was a reporter for 30 years before I went into the State Department, and one of the biggest revelations to me in taking that new job was what's called the interagency process. Everything that we did at the State Department was in coordination with the Department of Defense, the intelligence community, as well as the White House, of course. And that had a purpose to it. Everybody was supposed to be on the same page. If you were going to go out and make a speech, you wanted to make sure that other people were read in on it. You wanted to have a consistent policy. And that carried up all the way through the State Department, a 70,000-person organization in 285 missions around the world. You need to have a coordinated message so that people aren't saying one thing to one person and another thing to another person. That does not do a good service to our country in terms of its foreign policy and clarity of understanding about it around the world.
Well, can you elaborate on that, Glen? What are the dangers of having a separate informal channel of policymaking like the one Giuliani and others are accused of running? Because some people might look at that and say, well, in the big scheme of things, you know, that isn't necessarily something that we would consider to be a serious offense.
Well, you have Bill Taylor, who's the person on the ground. He's the chief of mission over in Kiev itself, meeting, for example, in one case, the next day with the newly elected president of Ukraine, and he doesn't know what happened the prior day on a phone call between the president of the United States and this person he's supposed to meet with, the president of Ukraine. So how does he know what promises have been made to him, what areas he should try and follow up on? So that in and of itself is irregular and leads to the potential for disjointed messaging or misunderstandings from both the person on the ground, who's supposed to be our intel person in the sense of picking up information from the Ukrainians and delivering it back to the State Department for distribution throughout Washington. If that person isn't in coordination or read in on what's going on, it leads to all sorts of possibilities in terms of lack of clarity in messaging and misunderstandings with a host nation, in this case, Ukraine.
Well, we have seen diplomats defy the White House and the State Department by showing up to testify. What do you think is motivating these officials to go against the administration's wishes?
Well, I think that a lot of them are living up to the oath that they took. I took it as well as them. It's the same oath that the President of the United States takes. It's the same oath that the Secretary of State takes. And that is to preserve and defend the Constitution of the United States. And at some point, you have to sit there and say, do I do what's right or do I do what's most politically or personally expedient? And I think a lot of these people are being put in the situation where they're being subpoenaed by Congress. They have information on something. In some cases, it's documented, whether it's through cables, emails, or text messages, and so they don't want to get on the wrong side of a perjury charge. So I think they're feeling that their duty is to fulfill this fiduciary responsibility they have to the country and to the Constitution, and so that's what's motivating them. State Department officials are taught in their very earliest class, their A100 class, their entry level into the department, that they are to serve administrations from either party without fear or favor. However, if they feel that they can't carry out the duties of that administration in an honest and ethical way, they're to leave. And so you see a lot of people facing that challenging choice, in many cases after careers that have gone 10, 20, 30, 40 years.
Well, the president today called William Taylor a, quote, never Trump diplomat, and said that never Trump Republicans are, quote, human scum. Two things. How do you think that line is landing with career officials at the State Department? And correct me if I'm wrong, I thought that Bill Taylor had been pulled out of retirement in order to go ahead and serve once again in Ukraine. Is that correct?
Yeah, this never Trumper was brought into the administration by Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, the person that supposedly has a very good relationship with the President of the United States. He personally intervened and asked Bill Taylor to come across the street. He was over at the U.S. Peace Institute, which is across the street from the State Department headquarters, to come not only over for a meeting, but then to head over to Ukraine at his personal request and with the endorsement of the president to be the nation's emissary to the Ukraine. So how do you think that sounds for everybody else that stands up and serves their country? In this case, Bill Taylor said that he asked a Republican mentor, a very high senior official. To me, it sounded like somebody like James Baker, a revered former Secretary of State, who told him, when your country calls, you answer. And so how does that resonate through the rest of this department when people feel like if they stand and step up for their country, they're going to be reviled by the President of the United States? It doesn't make for a very good work environment there, and it also has people looking over their shoulder when they're supposed to be doing their jobs.
On that note, what have you heard, Glenn, from folks who may still be working at the State Department about how all of this is impacting their day-to-day?
Well, they're demoralized and they're uncertain. They're demoralized because ever since the beginning of this administration, we first had this very rudderless year with Rex Tillerson there, and then you came in with Mike Pompeo and hopes were lifted. He said that he was going to restore the department's swagger. He put out an Instagram logo of the Department of Swagger. Everybody felt like there was going to be a champion there, and now they've been drawn into this political battle. And so they are having to choose between their careers, serving the secretary, not alienating the President of the United States, who they're supposed to serve. So it's a very discontented place right now. And people have to understand, the State Department is a key member of our national security apparatus. And so if you have one of the key members of the national security apparatus in complete disarray, with people looking over their shoulders, not communicating clearly up the chain of command, it really does not serve our country well. So it's with no hyperbole that I say this is not good for our country.
Glen Johnson for us. Glenn, thank you so much for sharing your perspective with us. We really appreciate it.